Okay, and we wanted to start our training with just a quote to kind of get us started. So we wanted to get an idea of where we were going with all of this. So we wanted to take a global approach to supporting our students' academic success. And we wanted to present this quote to you. It's not what you do for your children, but what you've taught them to do for themselves that will make them more successful human beings. It's a quote from an Andlander from our past. So we thought that might be a good beginning to give you an idea of kind of where we're coming from so that we can help our students grow and learn from themselves, become a little bit more independent and be able to be successful. So that's part of our presentation.
She's following me. Oh, what's your
So we will go on to a brief overview of what we will be presenting today. We're going to be talking about what success looks like. So what we think success is. We're going to touch on what the hierarchy of needs are so that we can figure out when would be the best time to approach success and what things are needed as starting points and good foundational skills. Also some ingredients to success. And also we'll be talking about what we think of whether we think people are born with inherent qualities of being smart or not smart and intelligence. We will also be touching on a topic that you may have heard of in the past, but that's important in education and learning in general as we move through our lives, growth mindset. And then we will end with some specific parenting strategies that you may be able to use to help your students succeed academically. And so I wanted to have us all take a moment to kind of think of what do we think success is? So I want you all to take maybe a moment to kind of think through for yourselves what you think success means for your students. You don't have to share. If anybody would like to share, you are welcome to share in the chat box or to unmute yourself to let us know if you want to share anything. But I wanted us, before we get started, for you to start thinking about what you consider success for your child. All right. So we wanted to present to you guys some information about what success is and actually student perceptions of what they think their parents believe success is. So if you look at this list, a group of students was polled in a national poll to ask them what they think their parents believe is their definition of success. So this is what they think perhaps their parents want for them. So obviously the first thing that students believe their parents want is earning good grades, preferring A's, that was the biggest, getting a job with strong earning potential, maybe being happy or satisfied with themselves is a good third, that's not bad. Going to going to a prestigious college, we understand that's a big stressor often, accomplishing your goals. Also trying to reach your potential is an important one that they brought up. Did not know some other students, a lower percentage, didn't really quite think that they were aware of what their parents thought, or doing things that they didn't want them to do, or excelling in a specific field. Now, before I show them to you, this is a different poll. So they polled the same group of students in a national poll to ask them what they thought the students felt success was for themselves. And the results came out a little bit different than what they thought their parents wanted, just so that you have an idea of a student's perspective on this. So the first top two were accomplishing their goals, being happy or satisfied with themselves. And the next few were very similar to some of the parent ones as well, getting a job with a strong earning potential, but that came up a little bit higher than earning good grades, and not quite straight A's like they thought their parents might expect. They thought B's are better. So a little bit less. And then also they brought up similar topics of trying to be their best and reaching their potential. Um, some students, a smaller percentage, of course, expressed being able to do what they wanted to do. So that autonomy, being able to control what they wanted to do. And then much lower on their scale of importance were students who wanted to go to a prestigious college and, of course, make their parents proud. So they did bring it up. Parents' opinions and beliefs and expectations for their kids definitely do matter. And they also care about college, but maybe not quite to the level as maybe parents do in certain students. So it certainly doesn't apply to everybody, but it gives us a good idea of where to start with and how maybe this could be a good conversation to have with your kids at some time to kind of make sure you're aligned, and that you can explain why you want certain things for your kids and explain what your expectations for them are, and what you want for their success and why, right? So you might be able to share why you want certain things for them and what you think is important. And they can share with you as well what they feel is important and what they want in their lives as well, so that you can communicate better. So that's just a background before we get started so that we can give you an idea of what students have for success. But I will hand it over to my colleague, Nettie, who will be sharing some information that we might want to consider as we start the topic of supporting our students.
Thank you, Nancy. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow said that there's certain needs that take precedence over other needs. And in order for us to fulfill the higher level of needs, we need to be able to fulfill the needs below them. For example, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the very bottom, we see our physiological needs, right? So that's our water, food, shelter needs. Then we get up to safety needs, which is security of resources, employment, family, and health. And then we get up to our love and belonging needs. So that is our relationships, love, friendship, etc. Then we get up into our esteem needs. That's independence, self-respect, confidence, and achievement. And so what we're saying is that before we're even looking at our self-confidence, achievement, and self-respect, we need to have our physiological needs met, our safety needs met, and our love and belonging needs met. And of course, the goal is always the self-actualization, which is going to be problem solving, morality, acceptance, facts, and creativity. And so what we want to do is we want to look at that in terms of school and learning. Okay. And when we're talking about supporting our students' academic success, when we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the more we're fulfilling and supporting the needs being met on the lower levels of the hierarchy, the better prepared our students are going to be to learn. So when we look at it in terms of school, I mean, we have their battery life and Wi-Fi, especially during COVID and distance learning, right? And virtual learning. Oh my goodness, the Wi-Fi and battery is needed as the most basic, right? And then of course our basic needs. Are we eating breakfast before we get to class? Are we, getting sleep and rest? Are students feeling emotionally and physically safe? Okay, do they have routines, access to counselors if they need it, belonging? Do they have relationships with their friends, even if they are physically distant friendships? Esteem, positive classroom culture, time for reflection, encouragements to take risks. And all of these need to be met before kids are really available to learn. And so when we're talking about supporting academic success, we want to make sure that we're supporting all these other needs first, which is going to allow our students to be more accessible and more ready to learn. Next slide, please. So key ingredients to supporting your child's success. It's more than just academics. Like we saw with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's a lot of needs that need to be met before students are ready to learn. We also want to look at their ability to manage stress, their perseverance, to keep going even when they have setbacks, motivation and challenge, curiosity and resourcefulness, and self control. Here is where social emotional learning really comes in and helps. So, in social emotional learning, we teach our students self awareness, self management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. And what we see is that social emotional learning increases academic performance by 11 percentile points. So we're not even talking about, additional math drills and additional writing and reading. We're talking about self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making. We're talking about increasing academic performance by 11 percentile points, increases in classroom behavior. I'm sorry, improvement. Improvement in classroom behavior, an increased ability to manage stress and depression, and better attitudes about themselves, others, and school. And all of this has a positive effect on your child's academic success. Next slide, please. Here we have a little video for you. Oh, Nancy, you have to make sure you unmic yourself so we can hear the video.
You can't go
Only
out.
1 hour of TV. That's it.
Sit down now. I'll help you with your...
Not on a school night.
We've all been there. Micromanaging, monitoring their activities, helping with homework. But guess what? These are not the things that will make the biggest difference in your kids' academic success. So what does work? People for Education knows. After sifting through 30 years of research from around the world, they have extracted the most important lessons for success. First, have high expectations. Let your kids know you expect them to do well, that you believe in them, and that their education matters.
So try this.
If you work hard, I know you can do well.
How do you think you can improve next time? I think you can do even better.
In our family, we care about school.
55 studies have looked at the lives of 300,000 kids, and guess what? High expectations deliver. More than drilling them with flashcards or helping them with homework. Number 2, talk about school. It sounds obvious, but don't just ask how was school today. Be specific. Let them strut their stuff. They love it when they feel smarter than you.
Try this instead.
So what was it like dissecting a frog?
Have you thought about what courses you might want to take next year?
Did you get to go outside for recess today?
A study of over 25,000 US grade 8 students found that talking to your kids about school has a bigger impact than limiting TV time or how often they go out during the week. Number 3, help your kids develop good work habits and a positive attitude. Help shape their work habits and planning. Encourage them to ask for help when they need it and help them navigate a world full of distractions.
So try this.
Your persistence paid off. I knew you could do it.
That's so great that you knew to get help when those girls called you names.
We all find some things hard, but I know you can work through this.
I can see you feel really bad about the mark on that test. What do you think you could do differently next time?
So help your kids develop a positive attitude and good work habits. The research shows it's more important than focusing on test scores. Number 4, read together. Reading is the foundation for education. So grab a book and read together often.
So try this.
Let's sit down and cuddle with your sister and read.
This book is great. What do you think will happen next?
You should read this book when I'm finished. I think you'll love it.
Studies show that when parents read to kids at 5, they are more likely to love reading and do better in math and spelling by the time they're 16. So remember, it's important to read to your kids for fun rather than focusing on phonics. School and homework is a challenge for children and for parents. Your job is to support achievement, so don't be a homework policeman or a substitute teacher. Instead, tell them you expect that they will work hard and do their best. Talk with them about school. Help them develop good work habits, to persist even when the going gets tough, and encourage them to love reading. So talk with your kids and leave the nagging and micromanaging behind. You're more likely to have a successful student and a great atmosphere at home.
You can't go
Only
out.
1 hour of TV. That's
homework
it.
done?
Sit down now. I'll help you with
No, not on a school night.
We've all been there. Micromanaging, monitoring.
Sorry about that. All righty. So now that we have watched this video, I think it's just to give you an idea and to maybe put all of us at ease, maybe, so that we don't have to feel like we have to be perfect at monitoring everything and micromanaging, like they said. It's certainly not a claim to have you ignore homework or have you ignore all of those things. But to give you a focus on what those big things are that can really make a big difference in your child's lives. You certainly don't have to replace their teachers. You certainly don't have to, break yourselves up or be really upset if you forget to ask them about homework one day or to forget little pieces of that homework, because those bigger pieces can be there that are really important to help them succeed. So how can parents actually help? Right? Here are some strategies that you can do. So as we talked about, a good beginner is to talk to your kids about what success means, what you want for them, and what kids want for themselves. So being able to have that discussion is really key, because just like everything else, if they're not buying in and don't want the same goal, they're not going to be helping to go move towards that topic. So it can be really helpful to start there and to continue that conversation as kids get older, right? So that when you're little, you discuss it, but you keep discussing it almost every year, every few weeks, every few months, whatever is comfortable for your family. And one of the things they did touch on the video was to avoid overscheduling, which can be really helpful. So having your kids scheduled in a lot of things is important because they, especially now, because sometimes the contact can be important, but avoiding overscheduling. So we want them to be involved in things, but not to feel overwhelmed so that they have time to concentrate and do things well. Also, maintaining downtime and family time. So those two things are related, right? So if we're overscheduling, we may not have time to talk to each other and actually have dinner together and have that important time that really escapes really quickly, right? Because they grow up very quickly. Also allowing children to develop on their own. One of the things that the kids did mention a little bit higher than parents did was having a voice, right? Being able to do things that they want to do and that they're interested in, not a specific maybe career or anything. They didn't mention any of that sort, but being able to make their own choices. So giving kids options in some ways can make a big difference. So you don't have to let them make all decisions or really big decisions, but you can have them feel, as long as they feel like they have a voice and that they do have choices that they can make, it can make a big difference to help them keep motivated. Also, honor health and well-being, especially now with everything going on. It's important and a big reminder that everything that we do is important to honoring our health and our well-being. So that we, when we're making sure we're thinking about academics and success in general, that we also make time for sleep and eating and all of those basic things so we can take care of ourselves. And a big thing is building responsibility at home and in the community. Nede may touch on this later and we may talk about it a little bit more. And if we have time, we may play a video. But they've done a giant study, a longitudinal study that says that students, in their lifetime, for people who are successful, one of the key factors for people who are successful in life is having chores assigned to them as youngsters. And so that's a key thing that I remember and that I took away from that speech that a key person in the community made that, helps kids build responsibility. So that's a big thing. Also, easing performance pressure. So as we noted, parents want our kids to do really well, and that's not a bad thing. But students may have a little bit of anxiety if they feel like they have to have straight A's in everything. And so if we're able to kind of have that discussion with them about how they could do better without making them feel like the world is over, right? If they don't get a perfect score. And of course, debunking college myths is also really important. Those Ivy Leagues and very competitive schools are important, and they're great accomplishments for some students, but not all of our kids will get in, and it's not the end of the world. There are very successful people that go to all colleges, different kinds of universities, even some who don't go on to college. So there are many ways for our students to be successful without feeling like a failure if they don't get into one specific school. So that's also a key discussion for parents to have. Some other suggestions that are a little bit more broad are in terms of behavior. So understanding our kids as individuals, allowing them to have choices to build their motivation, like we mentioned, and also praising their efforts. So positive reinforcement is a key behavioral strategy for a lot of things. And it works for all of us as adults as well. We reward ourselves for lots of things that can help us move in the right direction. So baby steps in the right direction in any way, if we praise our kids. And it doesn't have to be a monetary reward or a tangible reward, but sometimes just telling our kids that we notice, hey, I notice you've been studying a lot more in science, and you've been reading on blah, 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 or a specific topic, or that you asked your teacher for help, or anything little that you notice, and you tell them. Kids feed off of that positive energy and can really help to motivate them to keep going. Also, positive discipline as a whole is a really healthy concept to foster in them. And modeling positive attitudes and emotions in our daily life can be really important for our kids. So how we react to things can really affect how our students learn to react to things in their life as well. So if we make a mistake, our kids watch how we react to that and how we learn from that, right? So
And
it's a key thing to remember.
I just wanted to add really quickly, Nancy, that one of the things that I really loved in that video, and it comes down to this section here, taking mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow from. That question of what will you do differently next time, or what can you do differently next time, is so, so powerful in instilling in our students, that mistakes are opportunities to learn and grow.
Definitely. I think it's a big shift for all of us to learn, right? When we fail or we make mistakes, we can feel like we're sad and very like it's not a good thing in our lives, because of course we learn from these experiences. And also it can be difficult to accept that we have to go through this to learn, right? So that's something that's a great learning experience for all of us. And many key individuals that have had a lot of success indicate that they've learned a lot more from failures that they've had in their life than from their successes. Because every time that we slip, that we make a mistake, little or small, those things we remember and we learn from and we grow the most from. So those are huge. So going on to something much more tangible, right? So like I talked about, those big things are really, really important, but we don't want you to forget those little things, right? So we want you to also remember that it can be really important to keep up to date on the information and the data that your kids have available. So we wanted to make sure we pointed out some key things you might want to bring up when you do have parent-teacher conferences. Some of us may get overwhelmed when we're going to the parent-teacher conference, and parent-teacher conferences sometimes are led by the teachers. We may have specific things we want to discuss, but you may want to jot some notes before you go, so that you make sure that you cover the key things to ask about, right? So not all teachers are the same, and they're not all going to cover all of these topics, but these are things that are important for you to keep up to date on, so that your kids know that you're interested, and so that they know that you're watching, right? Even as they get older, and sometimes even more importantly as they get older, because those things are important to monitor. So asking about homework. Are they doing it accurately and on time? Are they participating in class? That's really important, even for some of our kids who are really good and who do all of their homework and study really hard. Participating in class and asking questions is really important as they get older and move on to college. So it can be hard for some kids. I know for me, it was really hard to raise my hand when I was younger and to be able to express myself and ask questions and volunteer. And it is hard, right? Public speaking isn't easy for a lot of people in the world. And so it's a good skill for them to start developing, but asking for help is really, really important. Also for organization, it's really important to ask, does your child seem organized? Does he seem prepared in class? In terms of academic success, which is our topic today, you want to ask specifically, how are they doing? Are they working up to their potential? And also ask to see concrete evidence of this, right? So don't just ask, how are they doing, and then be okay with that answer. It can be really important if the teacher doesn't share it automatically. Can you ask to see specific data? How did they do on specific assignments? How did they do on specific tests? And ask them specifically for concrete things you can do at home to support learning, so that they give you their advice, because they know what topics they're going to cover and they know how your child can succeed better in their class. And teachers may not offer that because they may not think you have the time, or that you want to do that at home, or that your kids want to do that at home. It can be really helpful to get some of that information. And sometimes it's not really menial things. Sometimes it can just be reading specific topics or going over specific things that can be helpful. Also asking about classroom time management. Attendance is really important, and focus. Does your child pay attention in class? Because that can be helpful for you and for your child to understand what's going on in class. You don't want to forget about social adjustment. That's important, right? Is your child respectful and courteous to teachers? Does your child appear to get along with other students? That's important as they get older. Strengths and weaknesses, right? So even if our kids are doing well, there is always room for improvement. I always say there's none of us are perfect. We won't be ever. So there is always room for improvement, and teachers usually know some areas that they might be able to work on, and they might be able to point out some strengths that they're doing really well in class. Also, you might want to ask for, do you have any suggestions for you or your child, right? So what are the best ways for you to contact them? So that is really key, I find, in a communication relationship with a teacher, right? Asking them what they prefer in communication. So some teachers prefer email, some prefer phone, some prefer text through like Remind or through a specific app. And that can be really key in building a strong relationship with your teachers of your students. Okay, so those are some strategies that we recommend. In addition, I will hand it back over to Nettie so that she can discuss some consequences that you might want to just be aware of.
Thank you, Nancy. So we also want to talk about some things that can take away from academic success, right? We want to talk about some of the possible negative effects on students of stress. So 54% of high school females and 32% of high school males out of a sample of nearly 5,000 Bay Area youth reported 3 or more symptoms of physical stress in the past month. So a little bit about stress. It affects the parts of the brain that are active. And when we're experiencing stress, the learning part of our brain is actually turned off. And emotions affect attention, memory, and learning. And so strong, unpleasant emotions such as stress cause our brains to go into survival mode, not teaching and learning mode. So that's an important thing to remember. Also, substance abuse. 73% of students listed academic stress as their #1 reason for using drugs. Yet only 7% of parents believe teens might use drugs to deal with stress. And then we have other social emotional pressures. As we're reflecting on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if we're when you're looking at that, the love and belonging is right there in the middle before learning. And if someone's having friendship issues or conflicts with peers, it may affect their ability to learn on those days of that conflict and things like that. Also, social emotional pressures can cause mental health issues, which is another thing that affects our ability to learn. Next slide, please. So here's a question. Are people born smart? Take a moment and think. Do you think people are born smart? You can add it to the chat if you'd like as well. Okay. Nancy, next slide, please. So let's take a closer look at some examples of whether or not people are born smart. Believe it or not, Einstein's teacher said he was academically subnormal. Yet he has come up with some of our biggest scientific discoveries and theories. Michael Jordan's coach said he wasn't more talented than others, yet he's one of the greatest of all time. Walt Disney was told he lacked creative imagination. I cannot imagine the creator of Mickey Mouse lacking creative imagination. And J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter series, was told her story would never sell. Next slide, please. Predictor of academic performance. Self-discipline is a far better predictor of academic performance than is IQ, accounting for more than twice as much variance as IQ in final grades. That's really important. So when we talk about whether or not students are born smart or not, and the nature versus nurture, meaning how much of what we do and succeed in life is based on our genetics versus what happens to us. But looking at that, that's saying that self-discipline is far more important than IQ, which is the natural ability. And Nancy mentioned earlier about chores, and there was a huge study, the Harvard Grant study, and they found that doing chores at a young age increases professional success. Something as simple as doing chores has a great impact on your child's future success. Next slide, please. So another thing we want to talk about is looking at your child's ability and different intelligences. So, you know, when we're looking at academic success, we also want to talk about multiple intelligences. And so there's different types of intelligence. You know, of course, there's the ones I think we most frequently think of when we think of intelligence, and that's our logical, mathematical intelligence and our linguistic intelligence. So, you know, how we're doing in our academic subjects. But there are also a lot of other, Nancy, can you please click through the, thank you. But there's other forms of intelligence. There's musical intelligence, body kinesthetic intelligence, spatial intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence, and naturalist intelligence. And so when you look at those, success has, you know, intelligence and success are a lot broader than just how well someone does in English and or math, right? Because there's musical intelligence as well. And students that have these other intelligence can be very, very successful in life. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy.
Alrighty, so now that we've covered that, I think it's kind of not a straightforward answer whether our child or children are born smart. It's a little bit of both, kind of like Nutty said, but effort and being able to have that motivation to keep trying and to actually do all of the work necessary to succeed is really key. And so a lot of our kids are not necessarily smart in the same way. A lot of them are born with their own abilities, like Nettie said, and we're going to go into some strategies that you might be able to use to help your child. Let's see if this works. There we go. So something that might help you is to kind of look at your own child and to figure out how do they learn, right? So each child is different. All of us are different. We're not the same. So how do people learn? So 1%, this is a poll that was done. It's not standard, right? So it's not going to be the same for everybody across different communities or different ethnicities or demographics, but this is kind of one of the polls that gave us a lot of people tend to learn from seeing, so watching things. So seeing things on a screen or seeing your teacher do something or seeing your teacher write something out, examples. So seeing things. Other people through hearing. So, right, when you're hearing a lecture, when you're hearing a teacher talk or somebody explaining something to you. Other people, there's even more senses that we use, right? So smelling, tasting, touching. So a lot more, there's also being involved, right? So what does this mean to you? Kind of, there are things you might want to think about in terms of your child. How does your child learn? Do they learn more from hearing things, seeing things, a combination of things? Do they also need to do things? I know I learned early on that a lot of times I learn problems a little bit better if I can actually do them first. So if my teacher is explaining chemistry, chemistry was extremely difficult for me to just listen and watch. But if I started practicing and doing it, I didn't quite understand it until I did it myself. So I think it's important for you and your child to start learning how do they best learn things, right? So we don't all have to learn the same. Not everybody is going to do really well with flashcards. Not everybody is going to do really well with listening to just a hearing of the lecture of something. So it depends on what style they need to be able to help them learn. And so I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to look at a great topic in education in what's called the growth mindset. So we have been sort of going around the topic in general, how we talked about failure earlier on. So a great quote that I think applies to this topic to kind of give you a description of what the theory is, that people are made and not born. So while we may be born with specific abilities, we are made because of everything that we experience through our lives and what grows within us, right? From whatever we get throughout life. So we are not just set in stone, right? So there are two different mindsets, and this is what growth mindset talks about. There's two different ways people see the world. There are either people who see intelligence as a stone block, so the guy on the left, this belief that intelligence and ability is fixed, carved in stone, that you think people are just born to play a sport and that's just how they are. It's either you are or you aren't. The people who believe that in a growth mindset, believe that no, intelligence will grow and develop as we go through life. That, yeah, maybe there's an ability that's there, but we can get better at things if we feed our interests, and our goals and motivation can affect what we end up being as like a little plant, like the person on the right. So you could imagine yourself as a plant, a little tree, right? So all trees may be born to, like if you're planting a lemon tree, they may all be similar trees with that same ability to grow lemons, but there are some trees who have a lot of lemons and some trees who don't, some that have ones with seeds and some that don't, right? So we're all, there's still that ability to change, and the tree is affected with fertilizer and water and what nature, how people treat it, whether it's moved a lot, right? There are a lot of different things that could affect it. So people with growth mindset believe that intelligence is malleable, changeable, that it can grow and change and you can develop your potential. And in addition to that, we have this other slide to give you an idea. So just in terms of how people see the world, people with a growth mindset that we were talking about, because they feel like it's black and white, you either have the skill or you don't, they may give up easily. So once, if they don't understand something at first, they may not keep trying because they think, oh, I'm just not good at that. And they may avoid the challenge after that. They may stick to what they know. They may not want to try new things because they're either good at it or they're not good at it. Whereas if we can try and make ourselves think that in that growth mindset, and that we can feed our abilities and learn from challenges, we can think of ourselves as a plant. And if we can help our children to learn that the brain is like a muscle. So I like this little icon, and that's why I put it down there at the bottom. That the brain can work out as well, just like your other muscles, right? If we work out, it gets stronger and we can learn to deal with bigger and bigger problems. So you can learn from feedback. When you can't do something well, you can look at it as exercise. The first time you exercise, you may not be able to run very far. You may run out of breath really quickly when you're running up a few flights of stairs. But if you keep trying and you keep walking upstairs every day, or running every day, or getting on a machine every day, or lifting weights like the little brain is lifting here, you may be able to lift more weights the next day, and it might not hurt your muscles as much. So you might be able to learn from your mistakes and not feel so horrible when things go wrong, and think, what can I learn? What did I do wrong that I might not do wrong next time? What are the things that I might be able to change so that next time I do better, right? So failure is seen much differently. And if we can learn to look at failure in a different way, even those scores and grades that we think are very important in our life, grades, standardized test scores, SATs, PSATs, the ACTs, all of those tests, achievement tests that kids take, it can be really important to have them say, what can I learn to do differently next time? Even just learning a different type of math, or a different type of science, or a different type of dance or activity that you are involved in. It can be really helpful to say, what can I try and adjust so that I can learn from it? And so I think I am sending this back to Nettie so that she can give you some really concrete examples as to what you might be able to try.
Thank you, Nancy. So when we're looking at a growth mindset, we're looking at praising effort, not the outcome. For example, fixed praise like you are such a great reader. What that comes across as, and you read between the lines, it's saying you were great because you were successful at this task. Long-term message is if you're not successful at another reading task down the line, you're no longer a great reader. If we look at the growth-oriented praise, such as, instead of you're such a great reader, you worked so hard to sound out those words. Reading between the lines, it's saying that you were great because you tried hard. And the long-term message is, even when reading is difficult for you, trying hard can help you succeed. For many of us, our natural inclination is to praise a child for their abilities and performance. So shifting the way we praise can be challenging. For instance, when you are excited about the progress that your child is making, you may be tempted to say, wow, you're such a great reader. But this global praise can have a negative effect over time. So by saying what your child is, such as a great reader, rather than talking about what she does, such as you worked so hard, you send the message that they're great because they were successful at this task. If you extend that line of thinking, it means that if she is not successful in the future, she'll no longer be great. In contrast, if you give specific behavioral praise, like commenting on how hard they're working, you're praising how hard they tried, which is a behavior they can continue to replicate in the future, no matter how hard or what task they are confronted with. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So another example, just to give you a couple of good examples, real simple examples, but great examples of praise and encouragement. So we're going to go from can't to not yet, right? So if your child's saying, I can't do multiplication, you can say, you're not able to do it yet, right? And that shows that you're going to get it done versus I can't. And then when you sit there with the can't, then the mindset is, I can't, no matter what I do, it's not going to get better versus not yet says you're going to grow into it and you're going to improve. This will be easy too. Learning to read is fun. So that what happens is when things get difficult, you know, they're going to continue to persevere if they are able to do things that are not always easy. Go from good job to you really showed persistence, effort, focus in reading that story. Again, if they struggle, you still want to be able to praise the persistence and the effort because that's what's going to get them through it when things get difficult. So going from, oh man, I did it wrong to, oops, what did you learn from that? What will you do next time? I think that's a really, really, really important thing to say with our students is, what did you learn and what will you do differently next time? Next slide, please. Oh, right back to you, Nancy.
All righty. Thank you for those examples, Nettie. I think we will be talking about some other parenting strategies that you might be able to practice as well. Just some reminders for all of us, right? So some key things you might be able to do is practice, right? What you ask our kids to do. That's really hard, but I think sometimes that can be the best example for our kids is modeling what we would like from them. So if we want them to learn from their mistakes, same thing with us, right? And a big thing is emphasizing the joy of learning for learning's sake. So maybe not focusing so much on those outcomes of what is happening, but enjoying the process, that it doesn't have to be frustrating or just a horrible thing we have to go through to end up getting straight A's or to getting into a college or whatever. It's not just about that, but that learning can be important because we want that information and knowledge to last. We also want to set high expectations that are appropriate so we can provide support for our kids, right? So remember back to the video we saw that high expectations can be really important, and reinforcing those throughout the lives of our kids can be one of those key factors to help our kids stay motivated. Be mindful of those goals that you set for your kids and the messages that you're sending. So be aware of what goals you're setting for them and what you guys are setting, and so that you know what is that telling your kids. We want to, of course, those reinforcements, right? Provide praise and effort and praise them for practicing and process, not just for the grades. So if you want to develop that growth mindset, it can be helpful to have that positive reinforcement as they're learning, right? So we don't want to just give them praise when they get A's or perfect scores or good scores on math tests or certain things. But like I said, if you want to praise them when they're studying for a specific test, or, oh, I see you're putting in a lot of effort into this project, not talking about the outcome or how perfect it's going to be, but that they're trying really hard to do this science project or to learn chemistry or to get tutoring on a certain thing. That can be really important so that they understand the process is really important. Use failures as the opportunity for reflection and growth. So talking about it, learning what we could do next time, providing honest, constructive criticism that emphasize growth. So not necessarily just being upset or having punishment or consequences for not doing well, but how can we do better, right? So focusing on the learning piece and growing and making those concrete plans for growth, right? So we can say we're going to learn from our mistakes, but how are we going to learn from those mistakes? So what can we do, right? So creating a plan to change. And also pointing out that all of those people we talked about that people thought were not going to succeed or that were not smart and not creative or not good at writing, even though they wrote a really popular Harry Potter series, all of those people didn't give up, right? So they kept persevering, they kept trying, and they kept working really hard. And that's something we need to point out to our kids. Either we are or we aren't smart, whether or not that's the case. The trying hard piece and the not giving up is often much more important than how much we were given at birth. So I think that's a big thing we need to stress to our kids. Oh, and it skipped backwards. Really quickly before we end, because we do have only about a couple of minutes left, we wanted to share with you some family resources that we think are great in the district, that we don't know if all parents are aware of. The South Bay Families Connected website, which is the white card on the left, it is an online database and website that has resources regarding wellness for our families. There is also a parent section and a student section. So there are videos, blogs, groups that parents and teens can join and get information about wellness resources like stress, academic stress, anxiety, relationships, substance use, social pressures like peer pressure, relationships, those type of things. And also some parenting ideas as well, and articles that parents can read. It's a great website. I'm not sure it's too clear to you, but it's southbayfamiliesconnected.org/TUSD. And if you access it, you can access just Families Connected, or you can go through our website, which has specific TUSD content on the front, but regardless, you're welcome to use that. Another great resource that we have is caresolace.com/Torrance Parents. This is a resource that we have a partnership with them to ensure that our Torrance parents have access to vetted, trusted resources for mental health and substance use or abuse resources, so that you don't have to search Google for these types of resources and you're not sure if they have issues with licensing or issues with court cases or reliability, or if they have openings. So this partnership is to ensure that you're only referred to places that have openings now, that take your insurance, and that don't have those licensing or customer care, court issues, or anything else going on with them. So if you ever have a need for that website, you do have to make sure you enter it correctly with the /Torrance Parents, or you're not able to get in. Also, the last thing we wanted to highlight was our newly released TUSD Virtual Wellness Center, which is a great place for parents and for students to visit. It's a great stress relief for a little mind break in between studying and being able to do those strategies to succeed, because as we mentioned, taking care of yourself is a great piece of knowing how to succeed. So you can go to the Virtual Wellness Center. There's calming areas where you can listen to calming music, different topics for journaling, for drawing. There's puzzles and games. There's health and nutrition information. There are great apps for your phone on meditation. There are little videos that you don't need your apps for, that you can learn meditation as early as elementary school. Little activities for breathing, exercise. There are a lot of exercise videos. There are resources there as well by grade level. And also some of the great videos that Nettie and I enjoy. Our favorite section is the animal section. So there are live webcams for different animals that are also great stress relievers for all of us who are working. If you have a moment and you need a brain break, it can be a great avenue for our kids as they're studying and doing all of this virtual stuff online. So even in normal times, if they're studying, it can be a good brain break to take for them and for us as well. So it looks like our time is up. I will stop the recording, and we hope that some of this information was useful. We will post the recording, and we will also post the video that we were not able to share because of time. Any of the resources, you should be able to click on the PowerPoint that we post afterwards. Okay, thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed the series. Thank you.